And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. Revelation 12:7. The ancient texts speak of a war, not on earth, but in heaven. But what kind of war unfolds in the very throne room of God? And who dares to rebel in a place of perfect order? Before mankind, before Eden, before time as we know it, there was a fracture among the divine. Some angels remained loyal, others fell. But they weren't cast out quietly, no. They were thrown down, roaring with pride and driven by ambition, led by one of their own. Who are these beings of unimaginable power? Why did they turn against their creator? And what role do the archangels play in this ancient feud? You've heard of Lucifer. You've heard of Michael. But what really happened when angels turned on angels? Stay with us, because what you're about to uncover is older than any myth and more relevant than you think. The heavens were meant to watch over the earth until they didn't. In the beginning, the angels were sent to earth as guardians. They were benevolent, radiant beings of pure light, entrusted by God to oversee humanity's fragile beginnings. The Watchers were their name, and their purpose was clear: protect the human race from the chaos of the world, guide them with wisdom, and keep the natural order intact. They were the unseen hands that shaped destiny, watching with patience as civilizations rose and fell beneath their watchful gaze. For ages, they did their job quietly and faithfully, but as time passed, things started to go wrong. Humanity fell deeper into sin. People grew corrupt, selfish, and lost. And the Watchers, the beings of light, remained distant, untouched by the darkness of the human heart. They watched, but they didn't interfere. But in the heart of one angel, a forbidden feeling began to stir. Semyaza, once a leader among the Watchers, stood on the precipice of something he couldn't comprehend. He had been charged with guiding humanity, but now he felt an urge that could not be ignored. He saw the beauty of the daughters of men, their vulnerability, their longing, and he was consumed by something more than mere curiosity. It was desire. Forbidden desire. What happens when the divine becomes tempted? What happens when those meant to protect instead fall prey to the very darkness they were meant to prevent? This is where the story twists, where the light itself falls into shadow. Semyaza, driven by a passion that burned like fire, looked to his fellow angels and shared his vision. A vision of rebellion descending to earth, of breaking the sacred law that bound them. He didn't see them as mere mortal women, but as something more. They were a chance to experience what it was like to give in to the desires of the flesh. But he wasn't alone. No, Semyaza wasn't the only one. 200 angels, lured by his words, by the promises of forbidden pleasures, followed him. Together they swore an oath, a dark oath, one that would change the course of history. They descended upon Mount Hermon, a place now drenched in the weight of their decision, a place where the very air crackled with the promise of rebellion. Wings cloaked in shadow, their eyes burned with longing. Their descent was not one of grace, but of defiance, an act of treachery against the very throne of heaven. Their wings were no longer bathed in divine light, but darkened with the stain of their choices. And their eyes? No longer the eyes of protectors, but eyes that burned with the unholy fire of forbidden love. They had traded their honor for passion. They had chosen the flesh over the divine. And in doing so, they shattered the celestial harmony, creating a rift that would never heal. Duty had met its greatest adversary, desire. As they walked among men, these angels were no longer the beings of pure light that had watched over them. They were now as much a part of the darkness as the creatures they had once been sent to protect them from. They took mortal women as wives, and from these unions came children, monstrous beings of great power. They were called the Nephilim, giants who would become the scourge of the earth. But in their fall, they did not realize the consequences. What begins in secrecy, in the dark of night, often ends in destruction. And as these angels fell from grace, the world began to bleed, corrupted by the very beings who were meant to protect it. This was no longer just a story of angels defying God. This was a tale of a cosmic struggle, one that would ripple across eternity between light and darkness, between duty and desire. As the earth quaked beneath their footsteps, as their monstrous offspring spread their terror, the question echoed through the heavens. Could the earth ever be redeemed? The rebellion had begun, and what came next would change the very fabric of creation itself. They took wives, and from this forbidden love came monsters. Genesis 6:2. The fallen angels, now bound by their dark oath, moved with purpose. They sought more than power. They sought to corrupt creation itself, to erase the divine order. In their twisted minds, love for humanity had become something far darker, something unnatural. But what happens when divine beings, entrusted with the protection of the earth, break their sacred duty and fall prey to the same desires that plague humankind? The answer to that question came in the form of an unholy union. The Genesis account is brief but devastating. The sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Genesis 6:2. From this union arose the Nephilim, giants born of both angelic and human blood, beings that devoured the world around them. As the Book of Enoch 7:2 reveals, and the giants who were born from the union of the sons of heaven and the daughters of men, they were great men of renown. And they ate all the work of men until the people were unable to sustain them. These giants were not mere mortals. They were creatures of immense power, towering over humans in size and might. They were abominations, breaking the laws of both heaven and earth, their presence a blight upon the land. The Nephilim were monsters, creatures of legends that tore apart both nature and society. Their hunger for destruction was endless. They fed on the very essence of humanity, spreading chaos wherever they went. With each step, they shattered the delicate balance of creation, leaving only ruin in their wake. And as if their monstrous size wasn't enough, the fallen angels too began to impart their forbidden knowledge. They taught humanity the secrets of heaven, secrets meant only for the divine. As the Book of Enoch 8:1-3 states, Azazel taught men to make swords, knives, shields, and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them. And there was much godlessness, and they multiplied in the earth. The very tools that were meant to protect were now twisted into weapons of war. The Nephilim were not content with their sheer strength. They sought to empower mankind with the dark arts, sorcery, enchantments, and vanity. The world was now full of chaos, with humans fighting one another, corrupted by the same forbidden knowledge that had corrupted the angels themselves. The earth, once a place of peace and promise, now cried out in agony. The balance of life had been shattered, and the heavens seemed to retreat further and further away. The beauty of the world was marred by the scars of corruption. What had once been a world full of promise and divine purpose now felt like a battleground, torn apart by the choices of a few fallen angels. And then, the fallen angels took it even further. As the Book of Enoch 9:6-9 recounts, they made known the secrets of heaven to their wives, and the wives of the watchers bore them giants, and the earth was filled with violence and wickedness. The women, once beautiful and full of life, had now become vessels of destruction. They were the mothers of the Nephilim, their bodies a gateway through which the horrors of the heavens entered the mortal world. The earth could no longer stand as it was. The darkness had spread too far, and the question that had echoed through heaven earlier now seemed inevitable. Could redemption still be possible? The heavens now trembled at the horror unfolding beneath them. The cries of humanity, desperate and broken, reached the ears of heaven, and a divine judgment was set in motion. God saw the wickedness of man, and it was great on the earth, Genesis 6:5. But it was not just humanity that had fallen into chaos. The rebellion of the Watchers had corrupted the very foundation of creation. It was as if every thread of the world had been pulled from its original design, and now the fabric of existence itself was unraveling. In the midst of this overwhelming darkness, when all seemed lost, a light flickered in the distance. Heaven, long silent, was about to respond. The archangels were dispatched, warriors of heaven, chosen for a task that would rewrite the fate of the earth itself. But what punishment would be enough to undo the damage done by the Watchers? What could erase the stain of corruption they had left behind? The archangels knew that their mission was not just to destroy, but to restore. They were sent to bring justice, but also to offer mercy, to cleanse the earth of its defilement and renew the covenant between God and His creation. But the battle would not be easy. Could heaven truly restore the earth to its original state of peace? Or would the darkness prove too powerful to overcome? Could the divine order reassert itself? Or would the consequences of the Watchers' rebellion forever haunt humanity? The cry of the earth was loud and desperate, but it was not unanswered. And then heaven responded, not with a gentle rain, not with quiet correction, but with fire, with fury, with divine force. God did not send a legion. He sent 4: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel. Each one carrying not just power, but purpose. Michael was the sword, the commander, the fury of heaven incarnate. And the Lord said to Michael, "Go, bind Semyaza and his hosts." Enoch 10:11. Michael descended like a star falling through the sky. His wings were wide like storm clouds. His sword? A blade of fire divine, unyielding. He would be the one to chain the leaders of the rebellion beneath jagged rocks and molten earth. His mission was not to reason with evil, but to end it. Gabriel, the messenger of judgment, came next. He wasn't just a herald. He was the sound of heaven's decree. He would strike the Nephilim, the half-breeds of horror, born from lust and disobedience. They had defiled creation. Their time had come. Go to the reprobates, to the children of fornication. Destroy the children of the Watchers from among men. Enoch 10:9. His voice shook the mountains. His eyes burned with righteous purpose. His command? Extermination of the unholy. Gabriel's arrival was not just mercy, it was war. But even in judgment, there was restoration. Raphael, whose name means God heals, was sent to tend to the earth, to purify the land, to cleanse the wounds of a planet broken by sin. But he did more than heal. He fought. And Raphael was sent to bind Azazel hand and foot and cast him into the darkness. Enoch 10:4-6. Azazel, the one who taught men to kill and women to seduce, was thrown into the desert of Dudael, his face covered in sharp stones, bound in eternal torment. Raphael, the gentle one, showed that healing can also come through justice. Then came Uriel, whose very name means light of God. He came not to destroy, but to reveal. He showed Noah the coming judgment, the flood that would wash the world clean. While others fought the Nephilim, Uriel prepared the remnant. He brought clarity in chaos, vision in darkness. While the world crumbled, Uriel gave humanity a thread of hope. Each archangel had a role like generals in God's celestial army. They purified. They didn't just fight, they fulfilled prophecy. And together, they brought down the hammer of heaven on a world infected by rebellion. Their battle was cosmic, moral, eternal. The battle was over, but justice was not yet complete. The Watchers had fallen, The Nephilim, once worshipped as gods, now hunted as abominations, and the earth, still scarred, still bleeding, still crying out, and heaven heard. The archangels carried out the sentences. There would be no appeal, no second chance, only eternal consequence. Semyaza was the first to fall under divine chains. Bind Semyaza hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness among the jagged rocks. Enoch 10:11-13. He was buried alive beneath the earth in a pit of burning stone. His voice now echoed only in regret. His fate? To watch as his children were slain, and to remain imprisoned until the day of judgment. No light, no escape, only waiting. Then it was Azazel's turn. The dark teacher was cast into the wilderness of Dudael, a barren place of sharp stones and sulfur winds. Bind Azazel and cast him into the desert, a hole in the ground, and cover him with darkness forever. Enoch 10:4-6. His name would become a curse, his legacy an origin of war, pride, and vanity among men. The people were commanded to cover the whole earth with his sins. He gave sin to man. Now man would give it back to him. His prison became the grave of his ambition. As the watchers wept from their dark prisons, their offspring, the Nephilim, were hunted, not just by angels, but by the earth itself. Famine struck. War consumed them. They turned on each other, devouring their own kind. The divine judgment wasn't just about punishment. It was about cleansing. Destroy all the giants, and when they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them also for 70 generations. Enoch 10:9-15. Their very existence had corrupted the world. Their erasure became the world's salvation. And then, silence. The angels who once roamed freely were no longer welcome. The veil between heaven and earth was sealed. The watchers remained in darkness. The Nephilim were gone. Humanity, broken and bewildered, was given one final chance. But it would not come through power. It would come through water. God had passed sentence. The archangels had delivered the blow, and yet the fullness of judgment was not finished, because a flood was coming. That's when God looked upon the earth and saw that all flesh had corrupted its way. He made a decision. Do you know what that harsh decision was? I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the earth. Genesis 6:7. This was the grief of a father, a creator watching his children destroy themselves. Yet, in that darkness, one man stood apart. Noah, righteous, obedient, chosen. God gave him a task, one that sounded insane in its time. Build an ark, prepare for the unthinkable, carry the last breath of goodness through the storm. And Noah obeyed. Then it began. The skies cracked open, the deep burst forth. Waters poured from above and surged from below. Cities vanished. Mountains sank. Giants drowned. The earth was swallowed whole. And all flesh died and moved upon the earth. Genesis 7:21. Everything except the ark floating alone like a heartbeat in a flooded silence. When the waters finally receded, a new world emerged. Quiet, raw, washed clean, but not untouched, because memories don't drown so easily. Now you might be thinking, okay, this is wild. Fallen angels, giants, ancient battles. What does any of this have to do with me? But here's the thing. These stories, they're not just old scrolls or distant legends. They speak to something real, something we all feel. Because the fight between light and darkness, it's still happening. Just not with swords and fire from the sky. Now, it's in the choices we make, the battles in our minds, the moments we feel pulled towards something we know isn't right, but it's tempting anyway. Just like the Watchers, we all face moments where desire pulls harder than duty. And like in the days of Enoch, The world still feels heavy sometimes, doesn't it? Corruption, chaos, so much noise. It's easy to wonder if anything holy is still watching. But the truth, heaven hasn't gone quiet. God still sends help. Maybe not through archangels parting the clouds, but through people, through moments, through sudden strength you didn't know you had when everything felt like it was falling apart. If you're facing your own battle today, remember, light is always closer than you think. Just as the archangels fought for the redemption of mankind, that same divine strength is here for you right now. So keep the faith, stay strong, and remember this journey. It's not over yet. Thank you for watching, and don't forget, we're just getting started.